For 50 years, he barely said, "I love you," not even once. He was quiet, distant, and guarded. But after his death, his wife found a hidden key, and what she discovered inside an old locked barn left her frozen in tears. What had Harold been hiding all those years? And why did he keep it from the one person he, Murch, seemed here, avd what been? In a quiet, weathered farming community, nestled deep within the countryside, where the fields stretched endlessly like ocean waves, and the forests stood tall like sentinels from another time, lived an elderly couple, Harold and Mary. Their small wooden house sat peacefully between golden fields of corn and wildflower-dotted meadows, its chimney always puffing faint ribbons of smoke in the colder months. For nearly 50 years, they had shared their lives, days filled with routines, seasons marked by planting and harvest, and nights spent by the fire in comfortable silence. It was a life built not on grandeur, but on simple, enduring love. Harold was a man molded by the land itself, strong, quiet, and steady. He wasn't a talker. Words came to him like rain in a drought, rare and often unnecessary. His love was expressed not through compliments or affection, but through the way he fixed the squeaky step on the porch before Mary could trip over it, or how he left her favorite flowers on the windowsill every spring. He tended to his vegetable garden with near religious dedication, cared for the chickens like they were part of the family, and always made sure the old tractor was in working condition, even if it hadn't moved in weeks. For Harold, the earth spoke louder than people ever could. But despite the closeness they shared, one thing remained untouched, a single piece of land that belonged only to Harold, the old barn at the far edge of their property. It stood like a forgotten monument, half swallowed by ivy and shaded by towering pines. Time had peeled away most of its paint, revealing the raw wood underneath. Its roof sagged slightly under years of storms, and the large door hung unevenly, locked tight with an iron padlock that looked as though it hadn't been opened in decades. Harold never went near it when the sun was out. Mary never asked why, not after the first few years anyway. In the beginning, Mary's curiosity had been harmless, even playful. She would joke about hidden treasures or secret inventions, but Harold would only smile, that same knowing half-smile, and change the subject. There was no coldness in his refusal, just a quiet finality, like a closed book that would never be reopened. Eventually, she stopped asking. The barn faded into the background of their lives. It became just another part of the property, like the windmill that no longer spun, or the old cherry tree that bloomed late every year. It was there, but it didn't need to be understood. And then, one morning in early spring, while the dew still clung to the grass and the robins had just begun to sing, Harold passed away. Quietly, peacefully, as if he were simply slipping into the earth he loved so much. Mary awoke to find him still, his hand resting gently on hers, his face soft with sleep. No pain, no warning, just gone. The world changed after that. The silence inside their home deepened. It wasn't just the absence of Harold's voice, it was the absence of his presence. The way he used to move around the kitchen in the mornings, or sit on the porch in the evenings, whittling wood with calm, steady hands. Now, only the creaks of old floorboards and the rustling of the curtains kept her company. The walls held echoes of their life, but no warmth. Mary moved through the days like a shadow, tidying up the garden, mending old clothes, staring out the window for long, empty hours. Time slipped by like smoke, first one week, then another, then many. The days blurred together, slow and heavy, and each one ended the same, with Mary sitting on the front porch, sipping tea and gazing across the yard at the barn. Its presence had become louder somehow, more insistent. It no longer blended into the landscape. It stood out like a question that refused to be ignored. One rainy afternoon, while sorting through Harold's nightstand, a drawer she had rarely touched, she discovered a small wooden box tucked beneath a stack of yellowed papers and folded handkerchiefs. The box creaked when she opened it, revealing something wrapped delicately in cloth. Her breath caught in her throat as she slowly unfolded the fabric to find an old, tarnished key. Her heart began to race. The key. For a long time, she simply sat there, staring at it, her fingers trembling. She didn't know whether she was frightened or drawn by something deeper. Curiosity, love, or maybe a sense of duty, to understand the part of Harold she had never been allowed to see. Clutching the key tightly, she made her way through the rain-soaked yard. The barn loomed larger now, no longer just a structure. It was a memory sealed shut. She placed the key into the old lock. It resisted at first, stiff from years of rust and neglect. Then, with a groan, it turned, releasing a sound so heavy it seemed to echo across the field like a sigh. The door creaked open, and a gust of stale, dusty air rushed out to greet her, like the barn was exhaling years of secrets all at once. Inside, darkness clung to the walls, but a thin ray of sunlight pierced through a crack in the roof, illuminating the center of the room with a golden beam. And as her eyes adjusted, Mary's breath caught. The barn wasn't a tool shed. It wasn't filled with rusty equipment or piles of forgotten junk. It was an art studio. Dozens, no, hundreds of paintings and drawings hung on the walls, layered over one another like memories stacked in silence. They covered every surface. Canvases leaned against barrels, sketches were pinned to old wooden beams, and faded pieces of paper curled at the edges from time. Each one depicted a face she knew intimately, her own. Mary saw herself in every style, every expression, every medium. Charcoal outlines, vibrant oil paintings, delicate pencil sketches. She was laughing in some, lost in thought in others. In one, she stood in the garden, holding a basket of vegetables. In another, she sat reading by the window, sunlight dancing across her cheek. She was young. She was older. She was joyful, tearful, strong, and soft. It was as if Harold had spent his entire life capturing every version of her he had ever seen. Every fleeting moment that words could never hold. On a paint-stained table in the center of the barn lay brushes hardened by time, jars of dried paint, and a leather-bound sketchbook filled with incomplete drawings. In the corner stood an easel. Upon it rested a canvas, an unfinished portrait of Mary reading by the window. Her figure was complete, every detail lovingly rendered, but the eyes had not yet been painted. They remained blank, as if Harold had been saving them for last, unsure how to capture what he saw in them.
Mary stood frozen. The air around her was heavy, but her heart felt light, full, overwhelmed. Tears welled in her eyes, not just from sadness or grief, but from awe. For all those quiet years, Harold had been speaking to her in the only way he knew how. Through brushstrokes and shadow, through the texture of canvas and the dance of light. This barn, once locked and forgotten, had been the sanctuary of his love, a place where silence gave birth to 1,000 unspoken words. She walked slowly around the room, touching the corners of the paintings, seeing her life through his eyes. There was no vanity in it, no obsession, just devotion. Harold had loved her completely, deeply, and endlessly. And though he never said it, he had shown it in the most profound way imaginable. When she finally stepped back outside, the wind had quieted. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm, golden hue across the fields. Mary gently closed the barn door behind her, but this time she did not lock it. She never would again. Endly, I found a side Mary loved most.